The Night the Sky Caught Fire, 24 July 1943, 0047 hours, 20,000 feet over the Eld estuary. The darkness is absolute, and the darkness is screaming. 435 RAF Lancasters, Stirlings, and Halifaxes roar westward in a bomber stream so dense the slipstream of one aircraft rattles the teeth of the next. Below them, the German coast is a necklace of searchlights and red tracer arcs climbing like angry vines. In the lead Pathfinder Lancaster, squadron leader Reg Reynolds grips the control column with one hand and thumbs the intercom with the other. 30 seconds to drop. Stand by, window crew. In the fuselage, 22-year-old Flight Sergeant Joan Curran, no relation to the physicist yet, just a name coincidence that will make historians smile decades later, leans over a wooden crate the size of a coffin. Inside are thousands of neat black paper bundles, each stuffed with silver slivers no thicker than cigarette paper. The bundles look like rubbish. They weigh almost nothing. The aircrew have been calling them tinfoil, Christmas decorations, and far ruder things for weeks. Joan tears the first bundle open, shoves it into the flare chute, and kicks the pedal. Nothing seems to happen. Then the world changes. Far below, on the dunes near Cuxhaven, Lieutenant Hermann Mueller of Flak Regiment 101 stares at the glowing green face of his Würzburg-Ries radar and feels his stomach drop into his boots. One moment, the screen shows a clean sweep and a dozen clear blips, the British bomber stream, fat and inviting. The next moment, the screen explodes into a blinding white blizzard. Hundreds, no, thousands of new echoes bloom like fireworks. The real bombers vanish inside a swirling snowstorm of ghosts. Mueller twists the game knob frantically. The ghosts only multiply. Along the entire Kammhuber line, from Denmark to France, every radar operator sees the same thing at the exact same second. The sky has gone blind. Up above, the first wave of Lancasters crosses the coast unmolested. Not a single searchlight finds them. Not one night fighter's upward-beaming radar locks on. In the cockpit of a Ju-88R1 night fighter orbiting Wilhelmshaven, Oberfeldwebel Paul Zorner screams into his microphone, "Control! I have no contacts! The sky is full of rubbish! I cannot see anything!" The reply from the ground is pure panic. "All units! Window effect confirmed! Visual acquisition only! Repeat, visual only!" But at 20,000 feet, on a moonless night, over the blacked-out heart of Europe, visual only is the same as blind. And Hamburg, poor, proud, defenseless Hamburg, lies 38 minutes ahead.
The woman who weaponized Christmas. Telecommunications Research Establishment, Swanage, Dorset, spring 1942. You can almost smell the ozone in wet wool. A narrow Victorian house clings to the cliffs above Swanage Bay. Rain lashes the windows. Inside, a coal fire sputters in the grate, and 29-year-old Joan Curran, physicist, wife of fellow physicist Sam Curran, and one of the only women allowed anywhere near Britain's most secret radar work, sits cross-legged on the carpet, surrounded by scraps of aluminium foil. She is cutting them with dressmaking scissors. Snip, snip, snip. Each strip exactly 27 centimeters long, 1.5 centimeters wide, half the wavelength of the German Würzburg gun-laying radar. Simple dipole theory she learned as an undergraduate, child's play. Except no child ever held the lives of 800 heavy bombers in her hands. Her husband, Sam Curran, watches from the doorway, pipe clenched in his teeth. "You realize," he says dryly, "if this actually works, the Air Ministry will never forgive us for solving the problem with something you can buy in Woolworths for sixpence." Joan doesn't look up. Another perfect strip flutters into the growing pile. Then shouldn't they have been so bloody arrogant about their precious radars? Let's see how clever the Jerrys feel when their screens look like a snow globe. For months, the RAF has been bleeding to death over Germany. Night after night, bombers vanish into the dark and simply never return. The official loss rate is obscene, sometimes 1 in 6, 1 in 5. Air crews call it the chopper. Morale is cracking like old paint. The Germans have built something called the Kammhuber Line, a belt of radar-guided searchlights and night fighters stretching from Denmark to the Swiss border. Each box in the belt has its own radar, its own controller, its own pair of fighters waiting like spiders. Cross the line and you are illuminated, tracked, and torn apart before you even see the enemy. British scientists have tried everything. Jamming transmitters the size of railway carriages, airborne sets code-named mandrill, carpet, tinsel. Nothing penetrates deep enough, long enough. Jones' idea is laughably small. A few pounds of aluminium per craft, dropped in bundles, timed to the bomber stream's speed. The strips will drift down at the same rate as a falling bomber, each one re-radiating the German radar pulse 1,000 times stronger than the aircraft itself. A smokescreen made of physics. The RAF High Command hates it on sight. Too simple, too cheap, smacks of desperation. One senior group captain reportedly sneers that he is not in the habit of fighting the King's War with Christmas decorations. Jones' reply is not recorded in the official minutes, but the cleaned-up version is said to have involved the word bollocks. By May 1943, after exhaustive testing over the North Sea, where even skeptical test pilots come back pale and converted, the bundles are given the bland codename Window. Security is paranoid. Crews are forbidden to speak the word aloud until the moment they cross the enemy coast. And the first operational use is scheduled for one target, one night only. Operation Gomorrah. The firestorm baptism of Hamburg. The night Hamburg burned. 24-25 July 1943, 01:15 to 02:50, over the target. The first thing that hits the city is silence. For 3 years, Hamburg has lived under the nightly wail of sirens and the thunder of guns. Tonight, the sirens scream as usual, but the guns stay quiet. The searchlights sweep in frantic circles, chasing ghosts. On the ground, Oberstleutnant Hayo Hermann, Germany's night fighter ace turned desperate innovator, stands on the roof of the Flak Tower at St. Pauli and watches the sky turn into pure chaos. No radar prediction, no controlled pairs, just hundreds of British bombers sliding through the darkness like sharks. The pathfinders have already marked. Red target indicators cascade down in perfect Christmas tree patterns over the city center. Green markers follow, precise, arrogant, untouchable. At 0:27, the first wave of 240 Lancasters opens its bomb bay doors. And then, the sky simply ends. High explosive and incendiary pour down in a solid river. 4-pound magnesium firebombs by the tens of thousands. Blockbusters that punch holes in the roofs so the fire can breathe. By 01:45, the separate fires begin to join. By 0200, the temperature in the streets is rising so fast that asphalt bubbles. By 0220, the first firestorm is born. People below don't run anymore. They are lifted.
Eyewitnesses will later swear the wind is blowing inward at 150 miles an hour, sucking bicycles, trees, entire trams into the heart of the inferno. Bodies are found shriveled to the size of children. Glass melts into the gutters. Up above, the bomber crews, men who have flown through hell a dozen times, look down and feel something close to terror. One pilot, Flying Officer John "Jock" McLean of 103 Squadron, keys his mic in a whisper. "Christ almighty, we've set the bloody sky on fire." The heat rises in visible waves. Lancasters at 20,000 feet register outside air temperature jumps of 20 degrees in seconds. Paint blisters on the wings, and still the window falls. Every 30 seconds, another aircraft kicks out a bundle. The aluminum snowstorm drifts down at 600 feet a minute, creating a glittering curtain that lasts the entire raid. German night fighters, finally scrambled under Hermann's new Will-Dessau single-engine tactics, climb into the maelstrom with nothing but eyesight and courage. They find nothing but fire below and British bombers above. In 90 terrifying minutes, 728 bombers drop 2,396 tons of bombs, more than the Luftwaffe managed to drop on London in the entire winter of 1940 to 41. When the last Lancaster turns for home at 0250, Hamburg is no longer a city. It is a furnace. And the RAF loses 12 aircraft. 12 out of 728. Less than 2%. The Kamm-Huber line, 3 years and billions of Reichsmarks in the making, has been rendered obsolete by a woman with scissors and a handful of tinfoil.
The morning after, 25 July 1943, 0600 hours to noon, from the North Sea to Bomber Command HQ. Dawn breaks cold and copper over the Wash. The bomber stream straggles home in loose, exhausted gaggles. Some aircraft are scorched black underneath, paint bubbled like candle wax. Others trail feathers of aluminum strips that never quite made it out of the flare chutes and now glitter in the sunrise like party streamers after the worst party in history. At RAF Scampton, the first Lancaster touches down at 0617. Ground crew waiting with tally boards stare slack-jawed as the big bombers keep landing and landing and landing. Normally, the dawn brings silence and empty dispersals. Too many empty dispersals. Today, the sky is full. By 8:30, the final count is in. 791 sorties dispatched in the last 36 hours against Hamburg. Only 31 aircraft missing. A loss rate of 3.9%. The lowest for a major raid in over a year. Air Marshal Arthur Harris, Bomber Harris, the most hated and feared man in Germany, stands on the balcony of High Wycombe headquarters, pipe clenched so hard the stem cracks. His intelligence officer, Group Captain Sidney Bufton, hands him the flimsy without a word. Harris reads it once, reads it again, then he says, very quietly, "Someone fetch me that Scottish woman with the bloody scissors. I want to kiss her." Across the channel, in the smoking crater that used to be Hamburg, the scale of the catastrophe is still revealing itself. 42,000 dead in a single night, more than the Luftwaffe killed in 8 months over Britain. Entire districts erased so cleanly that only the tram rails remain, glowing red in the ashes. The Elbe itself boils in places from the heat. Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring receives the first reports at Karenhall and refuses to believe them. He telephones the Hamburg Gauleiter, Karl Kaufmann, and screams down the line, "Impossible! The Englanders cannot do this! Find me the traitors who failed!" Kaufmann's reply is barely audible over the crackling line. There are no traitors, Herr Reichsmarschall. There is only fire and snow in the radars. In Berlin, Albert Speer walks the Chancellery corridors white-faced and tells a silent Martin Bormann, if the English can do this to Hamburg tonight, they can do it to every city in the Reich by Christmas. The war in the air is lost. And somewhere in a quiet lab in Malvern, Joan Curran, still covered in tiny flecks of aluminum that refuse to brush off, receives a single handwritten note slipped under her door by a grinning RAF officer. It reads simply, "Dr. Curran, you have just saved more British lives in one night than I have managed in 2 years of war. The air crews are calling it angel foil now. Thank you. A.T. Harris." She pins the note above her workbench, right next to the scissors. Then she starts calculating new strip lengths, because the Germans will adapt. They always do. But for one perfect, terrible night, a handful of tinfoil and a physicist's stubborn mind tore the eyes out of the Luftwaffe. And the Blitzkrieg that once darkened London now burns its own map.
The echo that never faded, July 1943 to May 1945 and beyond. The war did not end that night, but something inside it broke forever. Within 48 hours, the Germans issued the desperate order. Every radar operator was to ignore all echoes slower than 180 kilometers per hour and smaller than a certain size. A crude filter hastily bolted onto a system that had been considered invincible. It was too late. Over the next 22 months, the RAF and the USAAF used window, later called chaff by the Americans, on every major raid. Nuremberg, Berlin, Dresden, Peenemünde, every one of them flew behind the same glittering curtain Joan Curran had cut with dressmaking scissors in a clifftop house. Loss rates that had hovered between 6 and 12% collapsed to 2, sometimes 1. An extra 4,000 Allied bombers and 40,000 aircrew came home because of a few pounds of metal-coated paper per aircraft. The Luftwaffe never found a permanent answer. They tried running fighters under visual control only. They tried new radars on different frequencies. They even tried dropping their own window to confuse Allied radars. But the Allies simply changed the strip lengths faster than the Germans could retune. By 1944, the night sky over the Reich belonged to the bombers again. Joan Curran herself never flew on an operational sortie. She was too valuable and, in the quiet sexism of the day, a woman. Instead, she watched the returns come in, night after night, and allowed herself one small, private ritual. Every time the losses dropped below 3%, she opened a fresh packet of aluminum foil, cut a single perfect 27-centimeter strip, and slipped it into a jar on her desk. By VE Day, the jar was full. She never counted them. After the war, the invention was declassified in dribs and drabs. The public never quite grasped it. Tinfoil defeating the Luftwaffe sounded like a tall tale told in pubs. Even the official histories gave it a paragraph at most, sandwiched between radar and the atomic bomb. Joan received no medal parade, no knighthood. Sam got the knighthood. She got to be Lady Curran by marriage. She went back to pure physics, raised children, and quietly watched the same principles she discovered save lives again in Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf, every modern air war since. She died in 1999 at the age of 83. On the day her obituary appeared in the Times, an anonymous letter arrived at the Imperial War Museum. Inside was a single blackened aluminum strip, scorched at the edges, still smelling faintly of 1943 high explosive. The accompanying note, written in a spidery veteran's hand, read, "To Dr. Joan Curran, this one came back stuck in my Lancaster's flare chute after Hamburg. Carried it as a lucky charm for 33 missions. Never told you while you were alive, didn't want to bother you. Just wanted you to know the sky was never the same after you. Thank you for the rest of my life. Flight Lieutenant R.G. Reynolds, Reddit, 57th Squadron." The strip is still on display today in a small glass case on the lower floor, almost hidden between the V2 and the Dam Busters exhibit. most visitors walk straight past it. But every so often, an old man or an old woman with shark eyes and a Scottish lilt still detectable after all these years will stop, lean close, and smile at the little piece of tinfoil that once blinded an empire and brought 800 bombers home through fire. Because sometimes the smallest things cast the longest shadows, and sometimes the most ridiculous ideas turn out to be the ones that win wars. If you truly want to discover the shocking and untold realities of World War II, then make sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. And in the comments, write your country's name. Let us know from where you're joining us on this historic journey.